Welcome, Soul Visionaries. I am your host, Sherrod Cohen, and you are now entering the Soul Vision Powercast, where we do it unfiltered and raw. We talk about anything from porn to politics, or even about anything you may have heard or saw. Let's kick it. Today, we're talking about the myth of the absent black father. You see it all the time on social media. Black women say black men are not there. You see it all the time on the news. You've heard Obama say it. I think you've even heard Jay-Z speak on, shootings. The reason why shootings occur is because of absent dads or something like that. That's the line that we get. We get the negativity. We get it all. We don't get the kudos. We don't get the pats on the back. We don't get the, hey, the great dad award. We never get that. So today I'm going to play a video for you from AJ Plus. They're talking about the myth of the absent black dad and how they debunked it. I've even have an article. We're going to discuss that. So first, what I'm going to do is play the video in its entirety. It's about a 10-minute video, but it's very informative. And let's go to the video.
One of the most pervasive stereotypes about Black Americans is that of the absent black father.
The absent black father myth is the idea, the stereotypical and incorrect notion that African American fathers have very little contact with their children, if any contact at all.
And in Black America, the reality of being fatherless is perhaps most painful.
73% of all black babies are born out of wedlock.
Experts say there's a crisis when it comes to black fathers in this country.
The news media loves asking where all the black fathers are, and that whole idea has been linked to everything from poverty and crime to even police violence against black communities.
Why are these police shootings occurring? Well, it's because there is an absent black father, or it's because black families are on welfare.
But this idea that black fathers aren't present in their kids' lives is actually false.
To be a parent is to have children that you love and try and support. And black fathers experience that the same way that anyone else would. Why would you even think there was a difference?
Hey guys, I'm Sana, and this Sunday on AJ Plus, we're gonna talk about the myth of the absent black father here in the United States, where it comes from, and how that stereotype tells a much bigger story about the black family and black communities in this country. Of non-Hispanic black women who gave birth were unmarried. But being an unmarried mother doesn't automatically mean that the father isn't involved. And in fact, that's exactly what that CDC report found. When compared to white or Hispanic fathers, black fathers were actually more likely to be involved in their children's lives in almost every way. They were even more likely to have bathed, diapered, or dressed their kids, eaten a meal with them, played with them, helped them with homework, and taken them to and from activities. And a lot of that held true even when black fathers didn't live with their children. But if we go solely off of what we see in the news media—
Where's your dad?
Don't really know.
Tell me about that.
He just not around.
You wouldn't really see black fathers in that way. Communications professor Travis Dixon studies the prevalence of stereotypes in mass media and the impact of these stereotypes on audiences. He wrote this report, A Dangerous Distortion of Our Families, and in it he found that almost all news and opinion media implicitly or explicitly encourages pretty egregious assumptions about black fathers. Black fathers were shown spending time with their kids only half as often as white fathers, contrary to, well, the actual facts.
We found that black mothers, white fathers interacted with their kids about 26% of the time in these videos and photos that occurred in the news media. Half as often, we found that happening for black fathers. Only about 14% of the time were black fathers actually interacting with their kids on camera in photos.
Dixon also found that news commentary singled out black fathers 60% of the time compared to white fathers only 20% of the time.
What has it been like since your dad's been in jail?
Can a father's love break through prison walls?
That media distortion is substantial. We know for a fact that African American fathers are just as likely to participate in the lives of their children than fathers of other races.
And this isn't, by the way, a politically partisan issue. Both conservative news outlets like Fox News and more centrist ones like CNN were top distorters, specifically Hannity, The Kelly File, and CNN Tonight.
Did both of you have fathers present in your lives growing up?
So where does this toxic idea about black fathers even come from? Well, one theory takes it back to a 1965 report titled "The Negro Family: The Case for National Action." The report became one of the most contentious political documents in 20th century America. Democrat and Assistant Secretary of Labor Daniel Patrick Moynihan put the report together to make the argument for how the Lyndon B. Johnson administration had to do more for racial equality than simply pass the Voting Rights Act. Moynihan argued that to really fight racial inequality, the government had to understand the state of black communities and why they were the way they were. But Moynihan ended up focusing on one thing: the black family. According to him, the fundamental reason for growing economic inequality between white and black Americans was a crumbling family structure in black communities. And at the foundation of the so-called crumbling black family structure was the absent black father. Moynihan looked at non-marital birth rates and rates of fathers living separately from their children and made a whole bunch of assumptions about parents' relationship statuses and parental involvement. The report didn't take into account factors like the legacy of slavery, generational wealth, or even economic migration in which men left their homes so that they could provide for their families. We spoke to Carvel Wallace, a writer and a podcaster, about the way black families have been discussed in the mainstream.
Reading some of the literature at that time, I was like shocked at how overtly racist liberal literature was in terms of trying to diagnose the ills of the black community and trying to explain why these uprisings were happening. And everyone was blaming it on the fathers and drugs and families and welfare and mothers and everything. It was a lot more convenient for the story to be told that black people weren't holding up their end of the bargain rather than acknowledging that America wasn't holding up its end of the bargain.
The Moynihan report ultimately created three camps: the liberal camp, which saw the report as a foundation for policy change; the conservative camp, which saw the report as a justification for the argument that black communities were responsible for their own issues; and then the left-wing camp that saw the report as blaming the victim, ignoring structural racism, and actually reinforcing racism. So what happens when people are exposed to these stereotypes about black families? Aside from the reinforcement of the idea that black communities have no one to blame but themselves, there's the everyday real-life impact these stereotypes have through policies and support for those policies. First, there's an almost total willful ignorance about the impact of slavery and modern-day incarceration on black American families. Foundationally, slavery ripped apart black families, and mass incarceration has put 1 in 12 black men between the ages of 25 and 54 in prison, versus 1 in 60 for non-black groups. Then there's how these characterizations of black American families have an impact on policies that affect all Americans. Take poverty, for instance. During the Great Depression era, the face of poverty was a white man who was down on his luck, or a white family fallen victim to circumstances outside their control. And the country felt a duty to end poverty, namely with President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. Then, decades later, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. began to shed light on the reality of poor black American families living in cities, and the reporters who followed him began to report on these issues.
We are tired of living in run-down, dilapidated, rat-infested shacks and slums.
And as a result of that, over time, all of the imagery began to focus on these black families, and it began to actually have a pernicious impact. It began to have us think of poverty and black families as tied to this issue of black laziness. And that's where we largely find ourselves today.
According to Pew, more than half of Republicans believe a lack of effort is to blame for poverty instead of circumstances beyond one's control. As the conversation on poverty and race shifted, so did the support for welfare.
People began to think that we needed to curb welfare benefits, increase work requirements, because the real problem is that black people are on welfare and they want to just be lazy. When we think about policies, what's good for families, we tend to think about them in these racialized terms. And when we do that, we tend to have a distorted view of what needs to happen.
So what's the solution? Well, here's what Dixon and Wallace had to say.
The main way that the media perpetuates stereotypes and racist tropes is accidentally. I think the people who are in the decision-making rooms and the content-making rooms are carrying these biases with them without knowing they're carrying them with them because there's no one around to challenge them. So I think that ultimately greater diversity at all levels of decision-making in the media and content process is probably our best chance of dealing with this.
As an African-American father myself, as the father of twin sons, I take pride in that role, and I know many other black fathers who take pride in being involved with their kids, regardless of the marital situation with the mother. And so I really would like the media to show some of those stories as well.
ultimately, I'm raising my kids to be a part of the solution rather than a part of the problem. You know, that's really all I can do.
So we focused on the way the news media talks about Black families and Black fathers, but there's no shortage of the same representation in entertainment. Take, for example, one of our favorite scenes of all time from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know exactly which one I'm talking about. So let us know in the comments below.
All right. You know, that was one of those things where, you know, young lady in AJ Plus came out and showed the distorted facts of Black fatherhood and this and that and the other. I've often thought about the different types of fathers out there. You know, you do have the deadbeat, you have the incarcerated, you have the passed away, and you have the fathers that are denied access. And a lot of times we we like to, if we listen to a lot of women, we like to just focus on the deadbeat, right? And then those guys that pander to those women like to focus on the deadbeat to make themselves look like this great dude. But when you have the deadbeat dad, the incarcerated dad, the dad that may have died or been murdered or killed, and then the dad that's denied access. We never want to talk about the guy that's denied access. We very seldom talk about the guy that's passed away or was murdered. And, sometimes we talk about the incarcerated. But those three categories can create the deadbeat. Now, what is the deadbeat? According to some women, all fathers are deadbeats if they're not with the mom in a relationship. And what women have to understand and realize that just because a man walks away from you, that doesn't mean he walks away from his responsibility as a father. He just does not want to be with your ass anymore. That's it. So a deadbeat father, most men don't condone the father being a deadbeat, walking away from his children, walking out of their lives completely, not being involved at all. Most men do not condone the deadbeat father. And yeah, we can talk about him if y'all want to, but we've already, this is beating a dead horse right here. This is just the dude that ain't shit. And no matter what you do or say to him, he's not going to pick up his responsibility and take care of his kids. He's just a deadbeat. And there's reasons why he's a deadbeat. You know, you got to look at it. Hey, was he raised in a single parent home with mom, and mom didn't require for him to do anything? She spoiled him. So he grew up in life thinking that he should be spoiled by women. You know, maybe he grew up with both parents and dad wasn't home as much because dad's out working all the time and mom is, taking care, doing basically all the raising of the children. We don't know. But that's a story that's always going to be there and be told because that's what's comfortable for most people. Now, when we talk about incarcerated, the father that's passed away or been murdered because he's been involved in street life or whatever, and we're going to talk about, or the denied access dad. No one wants to really talk about them because, see, that puts the accountability back onto the mom, right? That puts accountability back on the mom. The mom doesn't, most women will not cop to denying access to the father. Most women will not say, yeah, I chose a man that was living this kind of life, so, he's incarcerated or passed away. It's like we always want to protect the feelings of the women, and despite how it makes black men feel, right? So, yeah, everybody wants to talk about the deadbeat, but no one wants to talk about the fact that, even the deadbeat, let's talk about the deadbeat. Even women have to take accountability for the deadbeat. He just didn't become deadbeat overnight. He showed you some signs that he was not going to be there. He showed you who he was in the beginning. You just didn't pay attention to him. Maybe he was dicking you down right. Maybe he was giving you a couple dollars whenever he got it or whatever it was. You didn't pay attention to it. So now you got yourself a deadbeat dude, right? The incarcerated guy. You knew what he was involved in. You knew what he was doing, but you still chose to ride or die with him. You still chose to be there. And then now he's incarcerated for however many years. And now all of a sudden, these ends, these niggas ain't this and this and that and the other. He in jail and woo, woo, woo. But you chose to be with him. Let's talk about the guy that was murdered. Let's talk about the guys that was living the street life and was unfortunately killed, right? You still chose him. You knew what kind of lifestyle this man was involved in, and you still chose to procreate with him. Accountability. Now, when we get to that one where we talk about the dad that's denied access to the children, nobody wants to touch that. All of a sudden, let's stop the conversation and this and that and the other. We don't want to hear anything about that father that's denied access. This the father that walked away from the woman because he didn't want to be involved with her anymore. He left her alone. But that didn't mean I don't want to be involved with my children. I like my children. I just don't like your ass no more. But now he has to pay the price because he doesn't want to live or be involved with this woman anymore, which is so fucked up. And I guarantee you, there's more dads denied access than there are deadbeat dads, than there are incarcerated and passed away, dads murdered. These dads that's denied access by their woman or ex-exes, they fight hard. They fight hard to try to get as much time as they possibly can. And then the bad thing about it is you got these bitter brother feminists out here who were raised by their mothers and who were raised by their mothers that fucked with a deadbeat, incarcerated dude or a guy that was murdered. And then so he gets that one side of the story, right? That's all he hears is mom in his ear. Your dad wasn't shit, your dad wasn't shit. Well then how about asking mom, why the fuck did she give you a deadbeat dad? And for some of you children out there that reach a certain age, that have an opportunity, how come you're not reaching out to your father? Are you afraid that you might find out that your mother lied about a lot of the shit that she was saying? There's been so many stories out here, man. I've heard some personally. Man, father found, son reached out to the father. Father had kept all the letters he had tried to send, all the toys, the whole 9 yards. He's like, okay, before you jump off and get off into that, just go look in that room right there. This man was a 40-year-old man, and now all of a sudden he was like, I hate my mom because I made so many mistakes that I could have just went to my dad and talked to him about before I made them and this and that and the other. So the black community is so fucked up in that we try to protect the feelings of women and just don't give a damn about the black men, right? Denied access is more prevalent than dudes just walking away and not wanting to care for their children, And the funny thing is when you look at those fathers that's denied access, you got some weird women out here that deny access to the father or deny, case in point, you got one woman who believed that if her son's father bought him some shoes, then he's obligated to buy shoes for the brother or the sister. That's not how that works. You laid up with those other guys that's not taking care of their responsibility, so you have to put in for those children that's not receiving. It's not up to that other father, that other child's father that's doing for his to do for the other ones. So then, hey, she says she just denied it all. He got to suffer too because, the other fathers are not stepping up. It's so fucked up in so many ways and on so many levels, but the black community is so fucking afraid to talk about this shit in fear that they may offend women. Fuck that. Why is it cool to offend black men? Why is it cool that we have to feel a certain type of way because we have women all day long saying, niggas this, niggas that, nigga. Yo, the deadbeat, the incarcerated, the passed away, y'all chose to sleep with them. The father you're denying access to, you chose to sleep with him. You knew what it was. You know what I'm saying? You knew the possibilities. Sometimes relationships work and sometimes they don't. You know, I'm looking at this article right here, and it says, when it comes to black dads specifically, most in fact live with their children. And as you heard on the video that I played, a CDC study found that about 2.5 million black fathers were living with their children, and about 1.7 million were officially living apart from them. And just because they live apart from them, that doesn't mean they're not active in their child's life. The article goes on to say, counting by the number of children rather than the number of fathers presents a different picture. The Census Bureau reports that slightly more than half of black children live in homes headed by one parent, which is usually, but not always, the mother. This is explained in part by non-co-residential fathers having more children. It's also true that black children are more likely than others to be born out of wedlock. But neither of these things make children fatherless. Millions of kids live with their fathers half the time, or at least part of the time, through joint custody arrangements. But children generally have one legal address, which is particularly important for purposes of determining school districts. Most often, the legal address is the mother's. This is a major reason that fatherlessness statistics in general are overblown. Fathers' homes all too often are not counted officially as being homes with children. Meanwhile, among fathers who live with their children, black dads are in many ways the most involved in their kids' lives. Black fathers, 70%, were most likely to have bathed, dressed, diapered, or helped their children use the toilet every day, compared with white, 60%, and Hispanic fathers, 45%. The CDC study found. Also, more black fathers than white fathers took their children to and from activities every day and helped their kids with homework every day. Now, I worked in a school. I was a security guard at one point at Finney High School. And man, I can see why a lot of those children were fucked up. When you watch the moms come up and do this and that and the other, and then it's like, wow, there are no, some of those children didn't have fathers, but damn, when you look at the mom, it's like, oh, okay, I can see a dude not wanting to be involved with you. It's just, and then when you look at the Head Start programs, right? Head Start programs, man, a lot of fathers were bringing their children to school. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just all women fault, all black men fault. But the point of the matter is, in order for us to heal the illness that we have in our community, we got to be able to sit down and talk about shit without people being triggered and being hypersensitive about shit. If we want to go ahead and talk about deadbeat black fathers, so be it. We can have that discussion. But let's talk about the fact that you opened your ass up and procreated with a dude that got himself incarcerated, a dude that got himself killed, and then let's talk about the mothers out there that are denying access to children, deny access to the dad because he doesn't want to be there anymore. Or you don't like his views on life or religion or whatever. You just want to be the main person feeding, raising the child. Just put it that way. Now, I'm going to finish this up. The lead researcher told me this study marked the debunking of the black fathers being absent myth. Fatherless can mean different things to different people. At what point is a child fatherless? Seeing dad only once a month? Never? Some kids who live with their fathers sometimes feel fatherless. And that might be because he works all the day, all the damn time. When you out here trying to provide a lifestyle for a woman that wants, the finer things in life, sometimes you're not going to be at home. All right, still, given that many kids who live separately from their fathers don't see them, or at least don't see them often statistically, fatherlessness is more common among African American families than among others. But that brings us to a second problem with trying to bring up fatherlessness now, amid the protests. Broken families are an inevitable consequence of the exact kinds of problems protesters are currently standing up against. Innocent black men who are killed by police obviously won't be there for their families. If you care about black children being fatherless, you should be supporting the protesters. George Floyd, after all, is being remembered as a good father and family man. Okay, black people are also more likely to be charged, tried, convicted, and sent to jail for all sorts of crimes than white people are, which again pulls fathers away from the children. Mass incarceration is a huge part of the problem. And the funny thing is about mass incarceration, it's like, I believe they say black folks make up like 16% of the United States, but 51% of the prison system. And the shit that we get locked up for, are minor things, but we get all day in jail. So that takes away the black father out of the household, and then a lot of y'all women talk shit, but you all were there. You all were reaping the benefits of all the ill-gotten shit that this man was involved with in the beginning. But then now that shit has hit the fan, black men ain't shit, niggas ain't shit, and this and that and the other. Come on now. Are you going to be a ride or die, as they used to call them? I don't believe in that anymore. I believe that, we should no longer ride or die. We should rise and fly. But at the same time, we need to be able to have these discussions because our community is fucked up because we can't talk. All right. None of this means that every black father is doing right by his family, no more than does every white, Latino, Asian, or other father. Some men of all races do the wrong thing and shirk their families. And then he said, he was talking about in his book, he devoted a chapter to the story of one man who had multiple children with 3 different women and did not raise them in their early years. Later, though, he realized how wrong he was. He spent years working hard to repair the damage and build relationships with his children. Today, he has loving relationships with them all. But it's crucial that we make clear absence is not the norm. Active involved parenthood is. Those who propagate false stereotypes need a reality check. The facts are clear. The problems that the protesters during the George Floyd thing were railing against are not caused by black men. And if systematic reform conquers these problems, more children will have their dad at the crib. Now, the thing is, like I said, we need to, as a black community, be able to sit down, have these conversations without getting mad and making it personal and this and that and the other. We want to attack this thing as a whole. Yes, sure, some of y'all done laid up with some bum ass motherfucker and had children with him. Okay, that's your fault. Okay, we can blame him for not being there, right? Okay, so now you still have to find a suitable man to be around your child, or you have to step up and do the right thing and just be there. You're not the father, you're just the mother that's doing it all. That's the fuck it, And then a lot of times, women want to blame the children that grow up to be these fucked up bad kids. I want to blame that on an absent father. But if that child grows up to be Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, or Mike Tyson and becomes successful, y'all want to take the credit. You can't take the credit without taking the blame. You feel me? So when it boils down to it, if we can't have open, honest, candor, dialogue with one another about these hot button issues, how are we supposed to solve our issues in the black community? Look, it's not a woman versus man thing. When our children are involved, we're supposed to co-parent, even if we can't cohabitate. This is not a competition. This is not who can spoil the child. This is about raising a child to become a productive human being so that we don't have to worry about generation after generation instead of, digress, not advancing, not progressing. We need to start really looking at the structure of our families and doing something about it. And it needs to start yesterday. So thank you all for giving me your time. Hey, like I say, if you saw the video and you liked it, hit the like button. If you're not a soul visionary, hey, hit the subscribe button and become a soul visionary. And then, if you want other folks to have that same opportunity, share the content and let's kick it. Thank you.